So, episode 7 begins with a narrative conceit in which the storyline is being told through the perspectives of a therapist, of Diane, as well as a woman who is in charge of the arbitration between Princess Carolyn and Todd. So, we get this kind of new, funny, experimental conceit where we get this two sides of the story, and they don't necessarily interrelate that much, but this is how this plot of this episode 7 is being told. Apart from just Bojack and Diane culminate at the end of this episode in a kind of thing where Diane actually, in one of the previous episodes, we find out that she is given a recording of Bojack's recollection, or Bojack kind of speaking on the boat of sorts. I think this was an episode, or season 1, maybe season 1 or 2, where he sleeps, or he almost sleeps with the daughter of one of this older character, but I can't remember the names right now. I'm kind of a bit of a loss for words, but Bojack, it was a big traumatic experience in Bojack's life, and he was never able to really resolve it, and it's one of the few secrets he never told Diane, who he tells most everything to, as been mentioned previously within the season. Diane kind of writes it into the script, and he has to play it out and kind of relive his trauma to some degree. In one of the big themes for the episode is about how one should be able to kind of have therapy, and this realization perhaps that Bojack as a character has not really been able to deal with his problems personally, and because he doesn't necessarily have that many people to speak to, and the one person who probably he has divulged the most to is not available at this time in order to comfort him, because she just has her own problems as well, as she just have Diane just had a divorce with Mr. Peanut Butter. So that's the story. The other side story is kind of not very important. It doesn't really have any kind of bearing on the rest of the series, but it's a bit of a fun kind of gag of sorts. Episode 8 is a Mr. Peanut Butter-ish centered story where the main narrative conceit of the episode is that it tells four different Halloween stories. Not necessarily 4 Halloween stories, but the central thing is Bojack has a Halloween party hosted by Mr. Peanut Butter sort of every year, and Mr. Peanut Butter always brings one of his wives there, and they always kind of end up ruining the party of some sorts, because they just can't get enough. They can just get sick of Mr. Peanut Butter and get sick of the whole thing, and it always just ends up in catastrophe. So we get four kind of side by side things. We get Jessica Biel and Diane and his new Pickles, and I forgot the name of the other woman, his first wife, but the realization of the episode that comes to is the idea that, well, Mr. Peanut Butter is just forever a child, and he's very childish, and the reason why he seems to be more attracted to women who are younger is because they're more fun and they're more youthful, and once they mature, they kind of outmature him, and he remains at this kind of static level, which is something you may kind of think about with Mr. Peanut Butter. He's not necessarily a character that undergoes much change in the show, but he is a character that is defined by that sense of funness and youth, and not necessarily taking things too seriously and all of that stuff. It's a fun episode. It's nice to have episodes again that are centered on different characters in the show, because I feel like there is more to be learned and more to be explored from those side characters as opposed to Bojack himself, because I'm finding his kind of arc kind of stale. In the last video I kind of talked about episode 6 and how I wasn't as impressed as I feel like other may be, because I don't know, I didn't think that it was I think it was a great episode. It was a great writing, it was a great exploration, but it wasn't what I felt was particularly necessary to the flow of things. But his mom died. That's a big part of the show, and we actually do get kind of the repercussion. I kind of was guessing it was like a one-off thing, but there is some repercussion into the next few episodes, and Bojack is trying to deal with his mom's passing, and just dealing with how his mom and his dad kind of shaped his own life, and we get a little bit of all of that. One of my favorite gags of episode 8 is that Princess Carolyn is every single Halloween she is in an Amelia Earhart costume. I think that's a great touch considering the Amelia Earhart episode earlier in the season. Episode 9 is kind of where things, to some degree, escalate. One of the things I've been kind of feeling about this new season of BoJack is that it hasn't really been escalating to a kind of wider thematic thrust. I'm looking at BoJack's character. I'm not really sure what he's, what's going on. I don't know how to I don't know how to relate, but I don't know where to kind of project what's going on, because we are 3/4 of the way into the season, and I just still don't feel like there is that much focus in terms of telling in terms of what's going on. Again, I've said this in the last 2 videos. My favorite storyline so far has been Princess Carolyn's adoption thing, which we get some more updates to in this episode. But BoJack I don't find very interesting anymore as a character. Though it is interesting to see where he's going and how the writers kind of want to explore that, but I just don't see that much potential anymore in further developing him. This episode ends with, I guess we kind of get a slow revelation of sorts that he has been addicted to opioids, and that's something, we kind of see throughout the show, which is not very surprising. It doesn't, and it's a result of something that actually happened within the season that kind of looked like a kind of a gag of sorts when it first happened, but it's when he fell off while Diane kind of suggested some kind of big stunt, and he fell off the building and broke his back or something. He got a herniated disc, but and if anyone knows anything about herniated discs, it's not. He doesn't seem to really be needing that much opioid medication every 3 hours and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean it's interesting. I guess I feel like one of the characters also I'm very interested in is Hollyhock, and I don't think that we get that much from her in this episode. We kind of get some gags about how she still is traumatized by Bojack's mother, but it's not as dark as the last few seasons. It's not as thematically cohesive and incisive as the last few seasons, in my opinion. And I wonder where it's going to go from here, because it just seems like we're going to go back to the sense of, well, okay, he crashes the car. And then now it seems like we are, Bojack has to, I don't find this progression of sorts very interesting. Though I do enjoy the show, it's very funny. There are many references I find hilarious. I love all the gags and about Jessica Biel's career. Everything's very funny and all. But I guess I just feel like I wish there was more to it than it is, because I've watched 4 seasons of the show, and it always goes to like a it's a very strong show, I feel. And I am, while the one episode that really stands out so far is that episode 6, but again, I didn't think that it felt. I think it could have. Now, I don't want to be prescriptive for criticism for the show. It does what it wanted to do. It had its monologue, and it was well written, well performed. I just wish that I personally resonated with it more. I felt too much like I was being told exactly what to feel, as opposed to just letting me feel things. And it's a nice written moral. It's very written. It's like a play. It's very circular. It goes in and out of. It's a good piece of writing. It's just I don't think that I wish I didn't know. Whatever. I'm enjoying the show. I never regret watching Bojack Horseman, and I while I do right now I'm reading this, I feel like I should be finishing this instead. But it's okay. I'll finish the show. I've just 3 more episodes left, and I hope it kind of, at least in the terms of what I'm looking forward to, I hope we get some nice closure with Princess Carolyn's storyline. And yeah, that's what I'm thinking about this show so far, but I'm enjoying it for what it's worth.